This episode of Back to the Roots podcast is brought to you by Byron Seeds. The folks at Byron Seeds believe organic requires a different perspective, plan, and approach. Organic isn't simply a different type of product or even a different way of farming. It's a different way of thinking, planning, commitment. It's a different philosophy on how to feed the world. Many won't understand, but the people at Byron Seeds do. We're owned by organic dairy farmers. We not only have the product, but we plan, manage, and execute organic. We speak your language, we share your struggles, and we laud your successes. Organic isn't a way of doing business, it's a community. We learn from each other. We're in this together. We'd be glad to talk cropping plans, management systems, the road to profitability. We understand what you're trying to do. We're farmers just like you. Visit us at byronseeds.net or give us a call at 800-801-3596. And thanks to Byron Seeds. Back to the Roots podcast is brought to you by Soil Biotics. Efficient is Soil Biotics fish emulsion-based liquid organic fertilizer additive. This product is a rich source of nutrients that slowly break down and release nitrogen into the soil. It is an excellent food source for soil microbes and helps relieve plant stress in the event of drought, heat, and excessive water conditions. To learn more about Efficient, visit soilbiotics.com or call 815-929-1752.
Listening to Rooted in Organic podcast. I know it's a new name, but earlier this year we were contacted by a company called Back to the Roots. Little did we know when we started the podcast and picked out our name that it had been trademarked back in 2009. So after having conversations with them, we agreed to change our name. So today we are really excited to have Alejandro, also known as Alex, who is one of the co-founders of Back to the Roots, on as our first guest on Rooted in Organic. Alex, thanks so much for joining us today. And can you introduce yourself and also give us a little bit about your background of your company and what it is you guys do?
Absolutely, Mike, Brian, thank you guys so much for having me on. We mentioned this the first time we connected, how serendipitous just this really was, that this beautiful, wonderful name that means so much, I think, to both of us, Back to the Roots, and now to our millions of consumers, brought us on a phone call. And it was just so fun to be able to full circle be back on now the first official episode under Rooted in Organic. So I'm super honored, super excited. And Mike, I kind of, as you mentioned, just a little background, co-founded a company called Back to the Roots that I now am co-CEO of with my other co-founder and my better half, Nick Hill Aurora. We are a 100% organic garden company based in Oakland, California. And we are the end-to-end solution for the next-gen gardener. We have everything you need to garden at home, from organic seeds to organic plant food to organic peat-free soils, organic seed starting, and even raised beds. So everything you need to start a garden is under Back to the Roots. So as you can imagine, this podcast hits home, and we're super excited to be kind of where we're at. Our mission is really simple. How do we get every single kid in America to grow at least one thing? Mike, Brian, we don't care what they grow. We just want them to experience that magic. So thank you again for having me on, and excited for this conversation with you two.
Yeah, and thanks for being on. We got your mushroom grow kit, and that is really cool. Something so simple, and to watch them grow, as somebody who, I have a garden, we raise our own meat and stuff, and I also rent a farm. But to do that on just a very simple little mushroom grow kit, and they were delicious, by the way. So yeah, that was really cool.
Mike, I love hearing that, man. that was our original product when we started the company. So a little background there. Maybe I'll take it even one step back to my full roots. I'm from Colombia, from Medellin, but I immigrated to a small town in Michigan called Paw Paw, where I went to high school, and then ended up at Berkeley in California. And that's where I met Nick Hill, my co-founder. We heard in a lecture, business ethics lecture in our business school, that you could potentially grow mushrooms on coffee waste, but nobody had ever done it. And something about that fact that you could take waste and grow food, that just inspired the both of us. And Nick Hill and I didn't even know each other. So that was how serendipitous mushrooms were. Taking waste, growing mushrooms on it was so mind-blowing. We both went up to the professor independently and ended up, he told us, hey, I read this in a book, don't know much else, but here's the name of the book, here's the name of the author. Ended up reaching out to the author, whose name is Paul Stamets, who's now a friend and longtime supporter of Back to the Roots, and started growing mushrooms on coffee waste, Mike. We literally took coffee waste from our local coffee shops, grew mushrooms out of our fraternity. Then we got a small warehouse, and then would sell them to farmers markets. And along the way, created that little mushroom kit that you're talking about. So with all that, I think exciting thing is that same product still creates all that magic.
Was organic always the only option, or did organic come along the way?
Organic has been, gosh, I mean, I will say we were 21 when we started this, not really new, didn't know anything about gardening, had never grown a thing in our lives. So I think pretty quickly we learned firsthand what organic farming was, because we, by just definition, we were farming organically because we would just take waste. Now, actually, if we get technical, the coffee waste, some of that was and was not organic. Pete's Coffee and Starbucks don't bifurcate, don't separate their coffee, their waste. So technically we wouldn't have been organic certified, and we weren't at the time, but we saw what it meant to not spray stuff in our food as we grew. And as we learned about this movement, and we went from selling farmers markets to then Whole Foods Market, we've been essentially just been lucky to stand on the shoulders of some of the founding fathers in the space, like Gary Hirschberg, founder of Stonyfield, James White, who is a board member of Honest Co. and has been part of this movement for a long time. John Foraker from CEO of Annie's, Michael Pollan, who's been a big North Star inspiration for our brand. So through being able to stand on the shoulders of these folks who really, in many ways, I kind of John Mackey, founder of Whole Foods, and Walter Robb, who essentially quit their day-to-day jobs in the 70s and 80s to join this movement of, I don't want to have shit sprayed on my food. That was kind of the premise of all this. Organic just means don't spray shit on my food, is kind of everything we learned. And we love that. And that's been fundamental and foundation to our passion for gardening, for food, and knowing where your food comes from. And through all that, organic and 100% organic is now the foundation to Back to the Roots. There's not a single product of ours now, nor will there ever be a product that's not organic. So it kind of became almost, we learned ourselves through the process of gardening and the process of farming that we had a crossroads and decision to make. And we were inspired by others and made the decision that, we're not going to come out here and blame and say, this is, don't do this or don't do that. We're frankly say we're not qualified enough to blame, but we get to be the ones who make a decision on how we want this brand to be. And we've chosen down organic as being really important to us. What about you guys? What's your philosophy on organic?
Well, I think, you mentioned right at the very beginning, it was serendipitous that we met through our names, but really what you're working towards and what we try to put forward is are one and the same. Because I think both Mike and I are in the same camp as you, is we don't want anything sprayed on our food. We want good, clean food. We don't want any, hormones fed to our animals. That's why Mike spends a lot of time, and I purchase some of the animals he raises because I want to know where that food comes from.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how it was raised. And now you've taken it to the scale up. And I think you kind of hit on a spot that I've noticed now that I've got young kids, that they can watch something grow and it's fascinating to them. And also as an adult, that's where I think the same connection you made of when you're growing on a small scale, it's a lot easier than a conventional multi-thousand acre farm to not have to spray or put down a fungicide or spray for insects or whatever it is that's destroying their crop, because you're watching that every single day, and you don't want to put Roundup on the food that is sitting right in front of you, right? And little kids see that same connection too. So, that mission, when you ask what is our view, it's very similar to yours. And I think that's the fun part about what brought us together here.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I figured that from every conversation we've had, everything y'all have, the type of folks you have on your podcast. I think that purity that brought, two 21-year-olds, Alex and Nick Hill, to give up their investment banking and consulting job offers to become mushroom farmers and waste collectors, that purity and that DNA is still deep ingrained in Back to the Roots.
That's really, really cool to hear, how you started with a dream and then it just evolved kind of into the organic only.
Yeah.
But I was actually on your website earlier today looking at your merch, and I love the shirt. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. Like, I've never really even thought about that before, but that's a really cool way to look at it, because when you plant something and you watch it grow, especially something that you have where it's growing in your house, you see it every day. That's really neat. Going back to where you got your start, were you actually selling the mushrooms or were you selling a grow kit right out of the gate?
So if we go back to when we started Back to the Roots, when we were seniors at Berkeley, we would take coffee waste, grow fresh mushrooms, and sell them to farmers markets and local Whole Food stores. And then as we did lots of farmers markets and really demos, I mean, we became, Mike, I was a finance guy. I knew nothing about selling whatsoever. But I tell you what, I tell our team today now, probably the best training I've ever had, and I recommend it to anybody that's in the consumer product good industry and really in sales and marketing. Best way to train is to go out there and do demos. So I did so many demos and realized, and you just get to learn about who your real consumer is. For example, I'll give you an example. Like we originally thought, our business school told us or taught us, hey, figure out who your customer is. So I knew I had to figure out who that consumer was going to be. But originally I thought it was just the foodie and the chef, but realized through demos and countless interactions that the people who were most passionate about what we were doing were families with young kids, and kids especially were like fascinated with, and they understood this whole concept of sustainability and taking waste and using it to grow food. So realizing kind of like, man, if we can teach that over and over and over again, I feel like that is really cool. And that's more exciting than just providing mushrooms to restaurants. That's great too. But the opportunity to inspire a next generation who we saw through these demos would hang out with us for like 20 minutes and ask all these kind of why, like, why did you do this? Why does coffee grounds, why do they grow? Or why do mushrooms grow on coffee grounds? Like there's so much curiosity inherently in just kids. And that ultimately made us realize that's our consumer, and that's who we need to create products for and with that lens. And we kind of now have evolved to saying it's for the kid and the kid in you. We love Dr. Seuss. We love Pixar, where you can have a kid and an adult go into a movie and come out smiling for perfectly different reasons, fun enough for kids, sophisticated enough for the adult. That's, I think, so much about Back to Roots. There's so much depth to our brand, and we take our work so seriously, but we don't take ourselves that seriously. We like to think of our brand as that kind of fun brand that isn't trying to teach, but it's trying to be so curious, so pure, and just this idea of just let's have fun and let's get our hands dirty. Let's learn about where food comes from.
I love that. And one other little correlation that we've got now coming out here is I also went to school for finance and economics, and I thought that was going to be my path after school. And then farming got in my blood. And it sounds like something similar happened with you. And I guess I'm just curious. I hear a lot of passion when you talk about your products. And was it the farming that drove you from the start, or was it the product and the people that were purchasing it that drove you from the start?
Gosh, that's a good question. Was it the people that bought our products? Was it the farming? Was it the movement? You didn't say that, but that came to mind. Like there's this exciting time. This is 2010. This is the kind of real, yes, we had the kind of organic movement that we had to kind of be on that second wave. We had to stand on those shoulders, like I mentioned earlier. But I mean, we've come a long way even from 2010, guys, like to 2023, where we are today. I feel like the energy around it, our consumer, yes. And I'll say my co-founder, Nick Hill, too. I mean, I feel like it was a combination. I don't think it was one or the other. Everything, the energy around the movement, farming directly, like, here I thought I was going to be working behind an Excel model all day, and then I'd be at 2 a.m. planting coffee grounds with Nick Hill, getting my hands dirty and seeing stuff grow out of, seed, technically spawn, but, looks just like seed when you look at mushrooms and how they start. You're kind of playing God when you grow stuff, and that's pretty addicting. So yeah, I think the combination, and last of the demos, like all of it was magical and really hard. We're making $200 a week, living off $5 footlongs. Nick was on the couch with his brother. I stayed in our fraternity one extra year to save money with a roommate, and it was hard, but also beautiful.
Well, it's a little bit of an unfair question, I realize. I can tell you that from my own experience too. The farming gets in your blood, and just the general, like you said, that beauty of watching an animal grow or a plant grow or whatever it is. But then then the tentacles kind of go out from there, right? Working with farmers directly, working with the people that love hearing about farming, it all kind of ties together, and it's hard to pick one over the other. I understand that's an unfair question, but I love hearing what kind of started the passion in the beginning.
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. It really was, because it made me think of, and like so many things in life, it's hard to pinpoint, and it's sometimes kind of hindsight 2020. You almost accidentally, or I think wrongfully, try to kind of simplify the feeling you had then, but it was a feeling that is hard to fully describe, and it's just because it was so deep, the love of farming. But doing it with somebody who's now become my business soulmate, I had a feeling then, and look, 13 years later, we're still at it together. That's what makes this the most fun. It's doing this with somebody I have so much love and respect for, Nick Hill.
I find this fascinating because I grew up on a farm. So I grew up with growing things. In the late 80s, early 90s, Dad started farming all organically because he's all about the natural way of farming. And then I kind of got away from the agriculture side, but then I came back in it and had a whole new appreciation for it because I was young and what the dairy farm did was it kept me from hanging out with my friends. But seeing that now, it's like the bug caught me late in life. But it's so neat to see, and I get really excited when I see young children take an interest in agriculture and their own food. Because I believe there's energies. If you grow your own food, it'll taste better to you than it will taste to anybody else because you're sharing energies. And I think it's really exciting. Going into some of your products that you have, like how did you then move away from just mushrooms? Like what was your thought process in what kits to put out there?
We, a lot of people don't know this, but for the first 3 years, we were full on just mushroom farmers. And then for about the next 3 years, we were just mushroom kit makers. So really so it was a very kind of one product and got out there as far and wide as we possibly could. I think as we expanded, we realized that, man, if we can create this amount of magic with one product, how do we keep doing this over and over again? And then that was kind of this evolution of Back to the Roots to where we went from being really kind of, we still are called the mushroom guys by so many people, but realized that this was so much more than just mushrooms. This was about an entire movement to get all kids, all families to grow all food at home. So we evolved into having a whole line of grow kits. And that was a really fun few years because it really allowed us to expand distribution. We went from selling to, just Whole Foods and Nordstrom to actually getting out into the home improvement channel where most gardeners today buy a lot of their home gardening products. So the Home Depot was our first national partner in the home improvement channel. It took us on and started expanding beyond that, and really went from a mushroom kit to a whole line, whether you wanted to grow tomatoes at home, basil, cilantro, lettuce, anything you wanted to do, all in your windowsill. And that was that kind of next evolution of Back to the Roots. And now we're on this kind of third 3.0 Back to the Roots, in which we've now followed our gardener into the outdoor. So we went and created windowsill planters when we were in our 20s. And in many ways, we were creating products for our own counterpart, or like our own age kind of people who were kind of growing up with us, who were, starting to have kids, but still lived in a small apartment, to now you follow us in our 30s. And now we're starting to move to slightly bigger homes with backyards. And one of the biggest things about gardening and gardening participation is once you get a backyard, you start dabbling into gardening. So we followed our consumer almost kind of as we've gotten older and kind of have lived that. We're now creating products in the outdoor for that same gardener. We've grown up with them, and that's the beauty. And some of our fans have been with us in our brand since the original mushroom kit, and we were in one store. And it's just been fun to kind of evolve the brand from a mushroom kit to a whole line of grow kits. And now, over the last 3 years, a whole line of outdoor products with the same principles, the same mindset, same, kind of sustainability at the core, 100% organic, transparency in how we do things. So we launched 100% USA grown and farmed seeds. We launched that at the Home Depot. First, we did a 100-store pilot, have now expanded nationwide, and then launched our peat-free soils at Walmart with a 1-year exclusive, expanding that now to thousands of stores around the country. And I'll speak to seeds specifically, maybe to kind of double click on, as you kind of talk about as we expand products, what like kind of brings it back and how Back to the Roots shows up so different in the marketplace. So we started with the Home Depot with 100 stores. Well, one of the beautiful things about Home Depot is they have a kids workshop every month. Well, this spring, so last, May, a few months ago, we actually partnered with the Home Depot's kids workshop, and we got over 420,000 kids in every single the Home Depot store, which is around 2,000 in the country, to actually start a garden by Back to Roots. So we donate all the seeds and, partner with them in an amazing way. And it was so wildly successful. We had one store have over 1,600 kids show up to build a garden. And we're going to do it again. And the goal is to double the number of kids participating next spring. So just want to double click. To us, product and community go hand in hand. So there's so much passion behind how we create our products. And at the same time is how we create a community around our products and push the envelope to get the next gen gardener, like to get them gardening, get them excited. Like you said, it's so freaking cool to see kids, experience that magic. Makes the hard work worth it.
That is really cool. Those kids workshops, I did not know they existed. But that's really something that's making change for the future, because if you get those kids addicted to growing stuff now, they're not going to stop. If once you grow your own garden, you don't ever want to buy anything anymore.
Agreed. And we sometimes joke around. Maybe Nick Hill and I, we joke and we say we're not smart enough probably to solve world hunger, but if we inspire the next gen to be curious about food and ask those questions around, where does my food come from? Why is some food not organic? Why is some conventional? What does that mean? Why does something that looks exactly the same, one apple tastes so different than another apple, just because of how it's grown and where it's grown and the variety that's grown? Like, all these questions to us are just a win-win. That is what we want to accomplish. It's instill this curiosity and growing.
And I think Brian touched on it when we first met, and I did a little bit of research about Back to the Roots. It's like, wow, what you're trying to do and what we're trying to do is the same. We're trying to get the word out there of people like you and of the organic industry and the organic farming, all that. It's really, really cool to have you on as our first guest on Rooted in Organic. It's going to take me a little bit of time to get used to the name change, but it's really cool to have you on. I would love to see your operation sometime.
Mike and Brian, we would be so honored to have you guys out in California. It would be awesome. We'd love to coordinate that.
Well, Brian, it sounds like we might have a trip to the West Coast again sometime in the near future. So
I'm in.
So I'll tell you
Alex,
what, we have our offsite retreat with our whole team on November 2nd and 3rd. I know that's coming up, but if it happens to work, it would be the coolest to have you guys be our guest speaker and motivate the heck out of our team. So open invitation, but if not, we can work on another time as well. But guys, thank you so much for having me on. It's a huge honor.
Thank you so much. It was really great to get to know you a little bit and hear your story. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Brian.